Hey, everybody, this is our Sunday once a month show, Minding Our Mental Wellness with Sister Munirah. Uh, we want to help the community with things dealing with mental illness. And this is part two
Mental
of our
health.
show, Family Systems and Family Dynamics. I'm Baruti Carl Alexander. That's Munirah, Dr. Deborah Wilson. And we're going to go into some family subjects. We touched on them last show, and we're going to go into them even further.
And,
Do you
and,
have a lot of families? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
and let me correct you. You said mental illness. We're talking about your overall mental health and well-being.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry if I said mental illness. What I should have said was mental wellness.
Right.
And that is what we are talking about, minding our mental wellness,
Right.
which does encompass a whole lot more, just not the mental mind.
Right.
It covers everything. So
And
yes, ma'am. Thank you.
uh-huh.
Um, do you encounter a lot of families in your practice?
Right now, I just do a select clientele. So and when I say select, I don't carry ongoing practice because teaching is my primary responsibility right now.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
train mental health professionals, mental health counselors who are preparing to go into the field. And but I did operate my own private practice for about 12 years.
Everybody
And
have come from a family, though, so everybody can relate in some way to being a part of a family.
right. And to answer your question, my primary practice and focus was families. And it happened inadvertently because I was sort of well known in the area and had a connection with the Department of Family and Children Services. And when individuals are experienced, usually when Department of Family and Children Services substantiates a case, then they'll send it out to a counselor to perhaps do a family and child assessment. So over the course of my practice, I did quite a few comprehensive child and family assessments.
So are you
And
saying that the CPS has a case, you might be the one that works with them as a counselor?
work with the families, yes.
Okay, all right. So I'm sure you encountered quite a few things.
Mhm.
Um, Last week we talked about three main areas. We talked about inappropriate events in a family. That could be a stepfather having inappropriate relations with a daughter or with somebody, or a stepmother having inappropriate relations or doing some inappropriate things. So that was one area. Have you encountered situations like that?
Well, it happens all the time in the society in which we live right now, with different things happening within the family system.
How do you advise the person who is coming to ask you for help? How do you advise them to deal with it? They may not want to keep that family members out, or they may not want to take them to the authorities. Uh, how do you advise them?
Well, it depends on what it is that's going on, right? Usually, and I'm saying on a light note, because again, the three topics that you presented here, you said inappropriate events, that could cover a wide range of things. Okay. Um, for instance, if say some drug stuff is happening in the family, it has an impact on the children. Um, department gets wind of it, then they'll send a case manager out and investigate the situation. Right? If they substantiate that something's going on, then they might say, okay, well, this is what the situation is. You might, sometimes they might need parenting skills, might be some anger involved, might be drugs involved. Okay. So I mean, just so much goes on.
Well, since
in
we
family
mentioned
these
drugs,
days.
and that's one of the areas, let's say you have somebody, a father or a son, who has a crack problem and it's affecting everybody in the household, but mama does not want to kick him out. But would you advise that really that tough love is the only way? Would you advise her that?
Well, again, see, you're asking questions that have multiple components to it that I really couldn't answer for you, right? Because it depends on what's going on in the family, right? I'm from,
So basically, it's a case by case basis.
right, right.
So there's no just general ideal that, if he's doing something illegal. Now, even if he's doing something illegal, that is privileged information between you and your client. So you wouldn't automatically, of course, share it with authorities unless that person was in danger. Maybe a wife is getting beat up by her husband over and over, and she's scared to say anything, but she's able to come to you. Would you advise her to get out of there first, or to try to make one last ditch effort to talk to, get him to come to some counseling?
Again, I see when you're asking a therapist a question like that, we have to do an assessment of the situation before we can come to any recommendations or conclusions about what might be going on within a family system.
What can you give from your experience? Maybe a myriad of options. If this is going on, then you would advise this. But if this is going on, you would advise this.
See, you put me in a corner again. It depends on what this is. So you're talking about domestic violence in a family.
Yes.
So if domestic violence is occurring in a family, if that person reaches out to me, then I would do an assessment with that person to determine what it is that person might be feeling and experiencing, and then we would go from there. Right? We don't select off the cuff somebody to come in and do it. Right? That person has to actually, if a person is experiencing something like domestic violence, they will have to reach out, because otherwise we wouldn't know.
Very true. Very true. From your experience, what are some of the families, of course, without mentioning any names, what are some of the family dynamics that have happened that maybe you wish you gave some different advice or spoke up quicker?
That's a difficult question to answer.
I understand.
It
But
really
this
is.
is a talk show where we're trying to help people and give them different scenarios. Unless they, and everybody out there in Facebook world, if you have a issue going on, or you just want to ask a question from a vicarious level about somebody else, not necessarily happening to you, but we have Munirah, Dr. Wilson here, and she can give you feedback on what's going on.
Or
So,
just, I'll tell you a topic that's going on right now. And well, this is outside of a family system, but, I'll mention this because it's something that's going on right now. Remember when we used to get we get a lot of alerts on the phone about a child being abducted.
yes,
Okay. Over the last since the first of the year, I think we've been getting 2 or 3 alerts a week about children being abducted by a parent. Now, when it first started, and over the course of a number of years, the children missing has been 2 years old, 3 years old, maybe a baby. Now, when those kind of alerts come out, sometimes you might say, oh, well, that's a mother and a father, because sometimes it'll say uh, the victim is this old and the suspect is this. So you say, okay, that's the father or the mother, and they're having some kind of family dispute or custody issue, and one of the parents has taken the child, right? Maybe one parent has custody and other one want it, or they're having some problem. But lately, we've been getting these alerts, and the age of the children has increased from my observation on these alerts. Let me get to this. I'll try to speed it up. And you see 11, 12, and over the last couple of weeks, 13 to 16. And we saw in the paper and in the news where these teenagers are getting abducted. Now, let's put 2 and 2 together. You've got the rodeo going on in Houston and a whole bunch of other things. Now, usually when you have these big gatherings of people all over the world, I'm sorry, all over the United States, when they have big gatherings like the All-Star games, the rodeo, and other events, trafficking increases. And when I say trafficking, see, I just changed the whole subject of the show. When traffic, but I think it's important. But trafficking, and what do I mean by trafficking? It's trafficking in humans, in this case, where young children, I mean, adolescent teenagers are being snatched up and trafficked. So I happened to get a call from somebody this week, and they're having a premiere of a documentary about trafficking, right? And you're gonna have all of the, you have the district attorney and individuals that have actually been involved in traffic, that have been trafficked. So life stories. I want to add for therapists, licensed professionals in Texas and in other states, one of your required continuing educations is a course in trafficking, because it's a big problem in our society. I do get calls from individuals with addiction to porn. And one of the pieces of advice that I give them is they want to be very careful, because you don't want to get caught up in a sting or something out there. And this is just one thing that I'm saying to them to help them with it, because trafficking is a problem. But let me tell you what I'm getting to here is that trafficking is a big problem these days in the Houston area. And what I found out was that now the traffickers are paying good-looking young men and women to go on school campuses and college campuses, engage with students, get their information, And that's all they have to do. And they're giving them up to $500 to go on campus, engage with young males and females, get their information, and then the traffickers take it from there. They don't even have to take them out on a date. But it's almost a bait and catch type of situation that they're setting up, but they're using these young men and women, good-looking men and women, to go onto these campuses to lure young people into trafficking. And so I just wanted to put that out there because that's something that's happening right now as we
That
speak.
is totally family related. The recent incident that was in the news with the young lady, the 12-year-old, Imani, I forgot, it's either Thomas or Bates, I don't know, but we believe she was being attempted to be trafficked, maybe not by a cartel, maybe supposedly the gentleman was 27 years old, but what is he, of course, messing with a 12 years old, probably was seeking to take her across state lines and have her doing whatever. And that's totally family related. And as you mentioned, there are people on high school and college campuses trying to find people susceptible to what they may be talking about. So that's totally a family related issue that mothers and fathers need to know about. I got two young girls myself, so
Absolutely.
I'm concerned about that.
Right. And it's not that they're on these are people that are being sent onto the campuses to scout out the vulnerable. Because, and when I say vulnerable, it's not intentional, because the victim may not have any idea of what's going on. But you're right. I have three granddaughters, three very nice looking granddaughters, and I always, and any young person, and I always tell them, be very careful, watch your surroundings out there, because they're out there snatching young women up. And once they get you, it's difficult for them to escape what is happening to them.
And we haven't even talked about the social media campaigns that are trying to pull in young people. You know, they have all of these tricks and frauds and different things. Of course, you and I get them all the time, but we are able to discern, and, you know, they don't mess with us too much. But if they can get the young people, and of course, you know, they got different tricks. They got bullying. They got different things that young people may be susceptible to. And we see a report all the time about a young girl. She may get caught up, and she's so upset about what is being said about her on social media, it affects her, some of them, to the point where they commit suicide. So it's a very serious thing. So social media, and that is the way those predators, one of the ways that, you know, the information they're trying to get is probably their Facebook account, their Instagram, their TikTok, all of those things, so they can come in and try to influence them that way.
Oh, and it happens all the time.
Yes. So
and before you know it, here's your young adult walking out the house or not showing up, and you're wondering what's happening, and it's that. Yeah, social media, that's one of the downsides of social media, I would say, when it comes to young adults.
Yeah.
From a trafficking perspective. Now, it has its other issues, but yeah, finding the vulnerable
and that is a
taking
family
advantage
concern. You know, dad is worried about his girl, and mom is worried about them being on that computer and them being susceptible, because there's so many predators out there all the time.
And
So
that's,
that is a very much of a family issue.
uh-huh.
Um,
And that's where we need to communicate more in families, have conversations, talk, right? One of the things that me sometimes, and I noticed this years ago, at least 10 years ago, when cell phones started becoming very popular, where you would go out and you're having a meal and you're watching I remember one time watching me and a colleague went to lunch, and just one of our regular lunch spots, and this guy came in with his son. Looked like, might go take him to the doctor or something, and then or got a day out with your child. But in this case, this guy walked in on the phone and was on the phone the whole time through lunch. And the little guy was just sitting up there, and he was just, and he didn't know what to do with himself because his father was not having a conversation with him. It happens with mothers too. But I'm saying, in one of the things, or one of the issues with families these days, is a lack of communication, right? So you have to keep young adults engaged. And I think it really starts at a young age, because if you allow them to be so focused and so involved with cell phones and iPads and all of these different electronic devices, rather than having those conversations from a developmental perspective, they're missing out on a lot. And we're not recognizing that. And it's really so important, because we have to communicate. Because if you don't communicate, then it might be somebody else out there that's communicating with them. And that,
yeah, I will tell you from personal experience that it can be a problem trying to limit access to their phone. I tried to take my daughter, who's about 14 at the time, probably weighed 95 pounds, and I tried to take her phone, and I swear she was so strong, and she fought with me and everything else, that of course I had to think twice about that. And I've heard many parents say that they are very careful trying to limit their child, because their child is so connected to that social media world that it really, they threatening to run away if the parent tries to come in and make them stop the social media. So it's a big issue. I would think that the best thing we can do is try to, from afar, let them know the danger and give them some examples of the danger, and then get involved with their social media world yourself. I mean, I would have to connect with my daughter's account, and I'm in there. I'm trying to see what's going on in there. And if I can't stop it, I got to know, be in the middle of what's going on, so I can try to have some influence, because we are definitely fighting against peer pressure. That's what a parent has to do. And the peer pressure today is so strong. Social media is strong, and all these other peer pressures. And mom and dad are working and trying to do things. So, and as a teacher, I heard all the time that, these parents ain't this, and I never said that, because my example, my experience was that the parents tried to do the best they could. They were just overwhelmed all the time. And as a single father, I understood that. So what about the pressures how can the parents fight against the pressures that the child encounters?
well, see, communication. But see, that communication has to start early on in the child's life. When you start talking about a 14-year-old and controlling this 14-year-old, that can become a struggle.
That's too late.
I'm not saying it's too late. It's never too
Okay.
late, right? It's never too late. I always say, if you wake up in the morning, you still have another opportunity to do something. But as far as family child interaction, that grooming, that development of communicating and building trust and establishing boundaries, right? Starts very early, right? And so this goes all the way back to, first, what advice could you give? I remember working with kids between the age of, say, well, let's say grade school through high school. And from a developmental perspective, kids want to please their parents through, say, 10 years old. But as early as 2, those children are learning through vicarious learning, right? Which means by their watching and observing. You ever heard this saying, oh, don't think the kids don't know what's going on? Because
Right.
even though they can't explain the situation to you in adult terms, in terms of context and understanding, they're taking in what's going on and forming their own opinions. That's why they say, don't allow your children the TV to babysit your kid. Or if you're going to watch a particular movie or something, make sure that the adult is in the room that can explain to them what's going on and why. Because otherwise they'll form their own decision. But getting to my point is, I would have, say, young adolescents getting ready to go into the young adult stage. And why I say 14 is past that stage, because getting a 14-year-old to do what you want them to do that you didn't prepare them for before that stage, could be a chore in and of itself, right? It can be done,
Right.
not too late. But when a kid gets to 12, 12 and a half, 13 years old, 13 and a half, they 12 and a half, 13, it's almost like somebody turned on another switch and you're dealing with another person. Take my granny, for
Understood.
example. I would go and she would just be, granny, want to sit by you, want to be all up under you and everything. And shoot, when she turned 13, it was like, because now they've got the attention of their peers and they understand things. I mean, it's like a whole nother person comes out when they turn 13, 14 years old. And so it would be a good idea if parents work with the children from a young age so that when they get to that point, they'll at least have a foundation in terms of how they live, move, and have their being in the world, because now the external locus of control has taken over in terms of where their attention is. And when I
I
say
want to
that, mhm.
I want to interject this. Half of marriages end in divorce, 50%. How would you advise that mother who has the kids? How can she share with her kids her decision to get divorced? And then how they are gonna now survive and make it. And what's she gonna share with them about the relationship with their father? Let's say he's a decent man. I'm not talking about somebody who did ugly things.
Okay, that's too general of a question for me to answer.
Uh,
Again, and I have to say that because it's almost like you riding in a car, and I tell my students this: you're in a car and you're riding down the street and you see some guys sitting outside of a store and they got a can of beer and they got their dominoes game going on, and somebody say, oh, they ain't nothing but drunks. Well, see, that's the problem. Well, you can't make that generalization.
you certainly can't,
Because
and that
have
was a
you
very
have
good
you
example.
have you assessed them? How can you say something like that? Right? You can't, that's basically judging because you don't know what their story is, you know?
Very, very important observation.
Right.
But I
And
will
so,
say this.
and go,
I have heard of mothers who have said, and after they divorce, they have told their child that daddy is dead or daddy doesn't want to have nothing to do with you. And neither one of those were the case. And I can't think of any worse thing to try to impact upon your child. Now, if he is really a bad person, even in that instance, that's her opinion that he's a bad person, and he may be bad with her, but may be a good father. So, how would you? I mean, what would you tell that mother of how she should approach these type of things? Just if he's a bad father, and I know that's a real qualifying term, but on the average, there has to be some standards that the mother should convey to her child and not necessarily just try to demonize the dad. That's my point.
I can't answer that because you don't know what the situation is. See, it's a situational thing. Somebody would have to ask a question regarding their situation, and then maybe we could discuss what's going on with them. Because, I
totally
would
understand.
really have to do an assessment or, just ask some questions before I would even get into a conversation with somebody like that. Because you don't know what the situation between, as far as that family system is concerned, you don't know, and those two people,
Right, right.
you don't know what the situation is. So your questions are
Is
just,
there ever a point though where it's okay for the mother to say he's dead and he's not dead?
I don't know.
I can't
I don't,
believe I can't see any reason for that. Now I can see her reason for moving away. I can see her reason for getting a divorce, but that's there are situations where the father or the mother, they mad at the one or the other and they take it out on the kids. They kill the kids and then kill them, don't kill themselves, they kill the kids to be upset with the other parent and stuff. So I cannot see those particular situations in the family. And but there are reasons for somebody to get divorced. That I understand. But then how you convey that to your child, that's a whole nother thing. I personally went through a situation where the mother of my child tried to villainize me. Now, because I eventually went through the law system and that was able to balance it out and probably help to see the fairness or to acquire a certain amount of fairness in a relationship. However, if I hadn't went through the legal part and got certain legal requirements and limits, no telling how I would have been treated in that situation. Certainly not, in my opinion, fair, you know, because there's.
And just like Department of Family and Children Services, they'll maybe get a report, and if they substantiate it, then what do? Then they'll recommend counseling. And attorneys do the same thing, right? In some states, they require that if you want to get a divorce, then, and under certain circumstances, let's get some therapy and talk to a therapy. Therapy works now if you're open to it. And so
That's the whole key. If you're open to it.
when you have certain,
both parties open to it.
yeah. So if one is and one is not, then the other somebody might benefit from it, to have it in terms of how you might handle the situation, right? But to just generalize on what you might do in a scenario like this or that would be just very, very difficult, because we live in one of the most diverse nations in the world, in the United States, and the family composition has changed so drastically. Remember, we used to talk about black and white. Now we're talking mixed couple, mixed race, and so on and so forth.
I do want to share this to any brothers who are out there having difficulty in your relationship, in your marriage. The worst thing you could do is try to physically enforce your power. If it's a real serious situation, you have to go to the legal. Now, in my situation and other situations I've seen, the court gives a certain amount of favorability to a black man because they've heard all of these stories about how bad black men are. But if you go through the process and you give it a good faith effort, they give a certain amount of favorability. At least when I went to court, and recently when a brother of mine, not a blood brother, but a friend brother, went to court. So I'm seeing more and more guys get custody, guys getting their just due in the court system, because it's we are still considered worst of the worst. And if they see you going through and acting in a very honorable way, they'll say, okay, that is one of the good ones, and we got to follow him. We got to help him because he's one of the good ones. That's just an observation I have. What do you say about that?
Well, women have issues too now, right?
Yes,
it can be the male or the female, right? That could be a male or female problem when we're talking about
family.
the
We're talking
situation.
about a family or relationship. Yes, and more and more. Well, I would not say more and more, because
but what you're talking about, I think, is where it at one time, and probably still a little bias there, where the courts it was a thing where it was more favorable for women. But again, I always want to add this caution that every situation is different. But you have all kind of opportunities out there now as a result of fathers demanding their rights in terms of their children, right? They have organizations out there saying, a good friend of mine, her daughter, her son-in-law got into a custody battle with his ex. And he's a really good father. And he wanted access once the paternity was established, he wanted access to his child, and he found out how difficult it was. Now he actually has a national organization called Father Has Rights Too. It's a thrive. He goes all over the country now talking about fathers' rights to raising their children. And as a result of that, he has joint custody with his son, and everybody's happy now.
Yes.
So from that perspective, it has been recognized over the years that fathers have rights too. And so, but again, we use caution because we don't know what the situation is from a standpoint of the family system dynamics and what's going on in the family. And so that requires, some assessment, if we want to offer any kind of advice. And me being a therapist, I always say counseling works. So
Yes, ma'am.
if
All I
somebody
was saying
really,
is,
if
if the
somebody,
brother is patient enough to go through the system and work within the system, once he gets to the decision part and hasn't shown no scary tendencies, he's looked upon favorably because so many brothers have a bad reputation, and it is of course well known Black brothers have a bad reputation, and
well,
it's
let's
hard for
correct,
the young man to
let's
learn.
correct that. Let's correct that. You're saying brothers have a bad reputation. Is it a media thing that
Yes, it is a media thing.
demonizes and blows brothers up like that? Because there's a lot of good brothers out there too now.
It is very much a lot of good brothers, and that's what I'm sharing, that if you can wait and be patient and prove you're one of those good brothers, you have a good opportunity. But there's a lot of brothers that have went through the system and are in jail and did not have the discipline and the patience to wait. And that's not easy when you're a young man and got all of these hormones going through you and different things, and somebody makes you upset. Your first thing is you might want to reach out and express yourself physically, but that is not the best approach. And we have to learn that. Now, there is a time to, of course, defend yourself but as I was just telling my son, who I just visited in jail, you have to learn timing. You have to learn the right time, how and when to express yourself. And that comes from a certain discernment. And how do you get that discernment? You listen at other people, you watch and pay attention, and you figure it out. And then you are able to understand, okay, this is the time I got to fight back, or this is the time I might need to fight first. But in most instances, you want to not react in that way because it's not beneficial or fruitful for you. I would say for most people, it's not. But there are times, and what I'm trying to share with the young men is you have to learn your right time to do what you're trying to do, when you're trying to do it, and how you're trying to do it. And that's the issue. And if you can be patient and go through the court system, you have a more favorable opportunity. That's all I'm saying. Hey, this is Minding Our Mental Wellness with Dr. Deborah Wilson Munirah. And we're talking about family dynamics, family systems, different things. Right now, we're talking about male representation and how you got to react and how those things will affect you and your family. We've also talked about trafficking. You want to get back to that and share back with that?
Mhm. Well, not really. I just wanted to get that out there because it's something that is going on out there, and we tend not to focus on it, but it's something that's a reality right here and right now, right?
It's big in Houston.
Oh yeah. And again, when you have big events in the city like this, big conventions, because Houston has a lot of, you know, national scene type of draws coming to the city. And I think isn't the soccer part of the soccer thing that goes to big soccer
Well, we do have
championships and stuff
a
coming into
professional soccer team, as
right.
well as we have a lot of people who watch the World Cup.
Yeah. And I think something big is supposed to be coming to the city over the next couple of years, but with the rodeo in town, and again, you got people from all over the world coming, and no all over the United States, but around the world that come and get involved in the rodeo. You've got unscrupulous people that want to come and have the ultimate fun, and our young adults are out there, unbeknownst to them sometime, being served up on the plate like barbecue uh at the rodeo. And I think that parents and young adults need to be aware and careful all the time, even when it's not a big event, but particularly now. I was driving, I got kind of twisted around coming home one day last week, and it was a young girl leaving a junior high school, and a car was driving by, cruising down, and she was looking, like she wanted to be noticed or something. And I was saying, Lord, I wish I could stop and caution this young girl to be very careful, because if that car stops and that guy talks her into getting in, somebody might not see her anymore. And it might have been innocent, but just the whole scenario, because she did it and he drove by and she looking around to see if anybody saw her almost motioning this guy like hi. But I think that one of the things that might be a good idea is that, and it's happening now, because again, I got a call where you've got individuals who are working in the field, in terms of trying to stop trafficking and address it. But I got a call and they wanted to invite me out and others out, and me to invite others out to come to this airing of this documentary so that we can bring awareness to trafficking and what's going on college campuses. Well, I shared it with colleagues and other people, and they were saying, what? Yeah, because, you talking about sending young people on Yates campus, on the campus of TSU, on the campus of HCC, specifically for the purpose of trafficking. That's pretty bold.
Yes.
And
And
and scary.
we've had some movies dedicated to Houston trafficking. They have Bissonnette and Bissonnette 2, made by Hugh. They tried to show actually what's going on, and a lot of the young girls end up in those difficult family situations. Well, what they depicted in Bissonnette and other movies, that a little girl run away from house because she's being violated, and she goes out into the community and gets violated more. and it's a ugly and bad thing.
It is. It really is.
Can we at least mention some of the resources that might be available? Can you share some of those?
Okay, I really don't have any resources right now because I wasn't prepared to even talk about it during the show. But there are resources out there. If you look up trafficking, do a Google search on trafficking, Houston and trafficking, trafficking. But just do a Google search.
I know the Houston Women's Center
Oh, yeah.
is one of the places that can help people.
Uh-huh.
And there's many different places that are here in Houston.
Uh-huh.
If they could do a search just for help for battered women,
And
that
what I'll do,
come about.
and what
And
I'll do when we get offline is I'll share the flyer for this showing of the film. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
and you can if you could just put it on either my timeline or Brighter Source of Brighter Light, I'll share with our audience. We are toward the end of our show. We just been talking and sharing, and that's how it goes.
Hold on. Let me see if I could. I will send you. Let me see if I can pull this up and just
So that is a big issue, and the Amani Thompson or Imani Bates, when that happened with that 12-year-old, that really
okay.
highlighted it. But that probably happens every day. It's just her family was able to get the word out and have everybody looking for her. But that probably happens every day, and
every day, and
yeah,
it's especially heavy in terms of traffic now, again, because of the rodeo. I don't know where the rodeo the last weekend is, but now and beyond. But the name of the is a forum that's going to happen on, and I'll send this to you so you can put it up on your site.
yes, ma'am.
It's going to happen at on Friday, April 12th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. at the M.O. Campbell Educational Center.
And what's the name of the documentary?
The name of the documentary is Eyes on You.
Eyes on You. Okay.
Yes.
I will mention that, Eyes on You. And I
Eyes
will
on
take
You.
yes, ma'am. I'll take a second to look to see if we have any comments. We'd have no comments. But in the comment, I'm gonna put documentary.
It's a forum that's gonna happen.
Yes.
At the Aldine Independent School District. It says Houston ranks as I see your abuse and your abuser. Houston ranks as the second largest hub for sex trafficking in the United States.
That's something serious.
An alarming 80% of victims are female, facing the peril of torture, rape, drug abuse, or even death. The next victim could be someone close to you, your daughter, niece, or granddaughter, abducted and thrust into this nightmarish trade. Predators often target unsuspecting girls at schools and community gatherings. While efforts to combat this scourge are underway, more vigilance, community involvement, and resources are essential to tackle the menace of sex trafficking in our midst. Participate in the Eyes on You forum moderated by Loretta Jefferson. where city leaders and various organizations converge to confront this issue of sex trafficking in Houston. So that's going to be again on Friday, April 12th, 2004 at 6:30 p.m.
Yes, ma'am.
At the M.O. Campbell Educational Center on Aldine Bender.
Well, that's some important information.
Yeah,
And
I'm gonna send this to you.
yes, ma'am. And we need to continue to highlight about this scourge of trafficking. Of course, we're sort of near Mexico, and I'm not going to blame it just on Mexican cartels or what have you, because you have just like with the young lady Imani, that was a 27-year-old Black man that ended up trying to get with her and have her with him for whatever reason. But it goes on all the time. And the movie Bissonnette has shown that trafficking pimp and world of what they're trying to do, and it goes on every day. So we need to be aware, and our young people are looking to be liked, and they want to be, they want attention, and they are susceptible. They are susceptible, and it's, as parents, it's hard to talk with them and to deal with those peer pressures that our kids are going in. But we have to continue to try, and we have to find different ways to try to influence our kids. We are at the end of our show. Munirah, Dr. Wilson, your final thought?
I enjoyed the show, and we'll get together and determine when we're gonna do our next show. And we're gonna be on topic next time. So I'll present a topic where we're gonna have the resources and everything available. And so I look forward to
Okay, I will send you some possible dates, and you choose from those.
Okay.
I don't have them available right now, but I will be sending them to you soon.
Okay, sounds good to me.
All righty, well, thank you. And I do believe this was a show that could have helped somebody out there, and it will be available. And when I get the video recording, I will be sending it to you.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. We'll see you all next time on Minding Our Mental Wellness with Munirah. Thank you.